I've seen an incredible transition. I remember growing up at the very end of the steel era, remembering that the final steel mills closing down and people losing jobs in the early 80s, and a lot of the economic challenges that this region faced, and watched it come out of that and face other challenges from youth gang violence to drugs activity and other challenges some neighborhoods in Pittsburgh face to now seeing this opportunity to once again be a leader, but this time with a clean energy, green economy. I think a lot of what we've been hearing in the lead up and in the run up to the G-20, there has been a lot of talk, and there's been a lot of talk about Pittsburgh was chosen because of its reputation as a green city. So I hope that we can look at Pittsburgh as a model of a city that transformed itself, and use it as a model for communities and cities across the world.
Youth are have the most at stake in the climate debate. The worst consequences of climate change are not going to come to pass during the lifetimes of the sort of older generation of voters. Those voters are and should be concerned for their children and grandchildren, but in terms of personal impact, it's much more present in the minds of youth who know that 30 or 40 years from now, their own lives are going to be deeply affected by the way this climate crisis unfolds.
A lot's happening in Pittsburgh. I've never actually been to such an event with major economies meeting solely for the purpose of figuring out major issues in such a concentrated way. Well, I don't think so. I think maybe some leaders feel that the New York part of it was the climate that Secretary General Ban Ki-moon called global leaders to the UN for a special summit on climate, because it was the last political debate that could be had with world leaders before Copenhagen. And now we've come here in a city that is a remarkable example of both not only economic recovery but also greening the recovery, but not to talk about the greening recovery part necessarily from the world leaders' perspective, but more just to talk about the economic recovery. So that's why I think it's very important that CAN and other environmental groups are here to continue that dialogue. And so I'm hoping that those messages will reverberate through the conference halls.
There's a lot of things that young people have been doing all around the world, and so I know that Barack Obama, I know that the heads of state from other countries have been hearing from young people about these issues. They've been hearing from us at things like Power Shift, when we brought 12,000 people to DC in the first 100 days of the new administration. They've been hearing from us when we make calls to the EPA, to the White House, to our senators. So they know that young people are engaged, they know that young people are active, and we've really been making that big push. And so I think what's really exciting is that not just are young people making connections with those heads of state, but they're taking action in their own communities and really building those solutions. So making their campuses these model institutions to say, we want you to do it, but we are also doing it.
I think what we could call a win coming out of the G20 is a defined game plan and a timeline for the countries to come together and really work some things out on the financing side. I think it's promising to hear the Obama administration talking about an end to fossil fuel subsidies. I think that's a really good signal. I hope, and I have been assured by folks in the administration, that that is not a substitution for having a real conversation on the financing mechanisms for a climate deal. But I think that's a sign in the right direction. So if we can take that conversation further, I think that's a victory.
Well, the linkage is clear. There's a lot of money offshore that's not paying any taxes. A lot of our estimate is at least $15 trillion. Most of it belongs to the very richest people in the world and some of the worst crooks in the world and dictators and so forth. So it eminently deserves to be taxed. A very low tax rate per year, if implemented by international cooperation on anonymous capital, could fund all of these climate costs, and with more left over. So